Once upon a time, in the land of ancient Israel, there was a deep and powerful theme woven into the story of God's people, a theme that speaks to God's surprising ways of choosing and blessing those whom the world considers least likely. It is the story of the firstborn, a concept rooted in the ancient practice where the firstborn son was given special rights, a double portion of inheritance, and often the leadership of the family. But God's story is not simply about human customs, it is about how God overturns human expectations and raises up the unlikely, the overlooked, and the lowly to fulfill his divine purpose. The story begins many generations before, in the book of Genesis, where we see the first hints of this theme. Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve, represent the early contrast, one favoring the fruits of the ground, the other the lamb, highlighting how God often chooses what the world deems insignificant or weak. Later, in the story of Jacob and Esau, we see the younger brother, Esau, a hunter and a man of strength, but God chooses Jacob, the quieter, more reserved son, to carry his promise. Even Joseph, the youngest of his brothers, is despised and dismissed, yet God elevates him to a position of great power in Egypt, saving nations through his rise. Throughout the history of Israel, this pattern continues. The Israelites themselves, once enslaved in Egypt, are a weak and oppressed people, yet God chooses them as his special possession. In the wilderness, God raises up leaders like Gideon, a humble man from the weakest tribe, and Jephthah, an outcast rejected by his own kin, to deliver his people from their enemies. Each time, God's Spirit empowers the unlikely, turning the world's perspective upside down. As we move forward in the biblical story, we encounter the story of Hannah, a humble woman who longs for a child. She prays earnestly, and God hears her cry. She is barren, considered low in social standing, yet God blesses her with Samuel, a boy who will become Israel's prophet, priest, and judge. The lowly Hannah is exalted, illustrating that God's favor often rests on those whom society overlooks. Now, as Samuel grows older, a new challenge arises. The people of Israel look around at the nations surrounding them, each ruled by a powerful king. They see the grandeur of kingship, tall, strong, and commanding, and they desire the same for themselves. They come to Samuel and say, "Appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations." But Samuel, a faithful servant of Yahweh, is deeply troubled. He knows that God has been their true king, guiding them through prophets and judges raised up by his Spirit. To ask for a human king is to reject God's direct rule and to step into idolatry, a turning away from divine trust. God speaks to Samuel and explains, "Listen to the voice of the people, it is not you they have rejected but me." He reminds Samuel that from the very beginning, Israel's desire for a king is a rejection of God's sovereignty, an act akin to the golden calf at Mount Sinai, where the Israelites fashioned a false god to lead them. This desire for a human ruler reflects a deeper issue. Humans tend to judge what is valuable based on outward appearances and worldly standards. They see height, strength, and outward beauty as signs of greatness, but God looks deeper. God instructs Samuel to give the people what they want, but with a warning. The king they choose will impose heavy burdens, taking their sons and daughters into his armies and households, confiscating their fields and possessions, and creating a system of oppression. Yet, the people insist, "We want a king so we can be like the other nations, with a ruler who will fight our battles." They desire the security and power that come from human institutions, trusting in kings rather than in Yahweh. The story then introduces Saul, a tall and handsome young man from the tribe of Benjamin. He is described as a mighty warrior, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in Israel, a perfect image of worldly kingship. When Samuel anoints Saul as Israel's first king, the people rejoice, seeing him as the ideal leader. But God warns Samuel that Saul's outward appearance masks a deeper problem. From the start, God sees Saul's heart and recognizes that he is not the one who truly reflects divine justice and righteousness. Saul's rise is marked by moments of promise and failures of faith. He begins well, leading Israel into battle and rallying the people. Yet, as his reign progresses, he begins to rely on his own strength rather than trusting Yahweh. His disobedience, especially in the critical moment of 1 Samuel 15, where he fails to fully obey God's command to destroy the Amalekites and their possessions, leads to God's rejection of him as king. Samuel laments, "Yahweh has torn the kingdom from you," and God chooses another, David, a young shepherd boy from Bethlehem. David's story is the central focus of God's countercultural kingdom. He is the youngest, the smallest among his brothers, tending sheep in the fields. When Samuel comes to anoint a new king, Jesse presents his sons, each seemingly qualified, tall, strong, handsome. But God tells Samuel, "Don't look at his appearance or his height, because I have rejected him." Instead, God looks at the heart. The Lord sees beyond outward appearances and recognizes the true qualities of leadership, faithfulness, humility, and a heart aligned with his will. Finally, Jesse's youngest son, David, is brought in. He is described as ruddy, with bright eyes and a handsome appearance, yet he is overlooked, tending his sheep. When Samuel anoints David, the Spirit of Yahweh comes upon him powerfully. From that moment, David's journey begins, a slow, patient rise to kingship, always waiting on God's timing, never rushing to seize power for himself. David's story exemplifies the upside-down nature of God's kingdom. He is chosen not because of his height or strength but because of his heart. God's Spirit empowers him to be a leader after God's own heart. Yet David's life is also marked by failure. His pride, his sins, and his mistakes reveal that even the most anointed are still human and fragile. His lust, his deception, and the tragic consequences of his actions show that divine authority and power must always be grounded in dependence on God. The biblical narrative continues to develop the idea that God's chosen king will be different from worldly rulers. The prophets, especially Isaiah, paint a picture of a future king, a descendant of Jesse, who will restore justice, bring peace, and heal the broken. In Isaiah 11, this king is described as a little branch that will grow from Jesse's root. He will embody wisdom, understanding, and righteousness, and will judge with justice for the oppressed. The natural enemies, lions, wolves, and snakes, will dwell peacefully together, symbolizing a restored creation. Even the serpent, a symbol of chaos and evil, will be rendered powerless. This future king is also depicted as a suffering servant who bears the shame and disgrace of his people. In Isaiah 53, he appears disfigured, despised, and rejected, a stark contrast to worldly kings who seek honor and glory. Yet, through his suffering, he will bring healing and salvation to many. His humble, disfigured appearance signifies that divine power often comes in unexpected forms, through weakness, suffering, and humility. The story of Jesus Christ, the ultimate fulfillment of these biblical themes, is a continuation of this divine pattern. Jesus, the Son of God, is born into humble circumstances, from a modest family in Bethlehem. His lineage traces back to Jesse and David, emphasizing his connection to the promised Messianic king. Yet, Jesus' outward appearance and social standing do not impress the world. He is described as a man of sorrows, familiar with suffering, and often misunderstood. When Jesus begins his ministry, he challenges the world's notions of greatness. Instead of seeking power and wealth, he embraces humility, service, and sacrifice. His death on the cross, a disfigured, humiliated form, becomes the ultimate act of divine kingship. Through his suffering and resurrection, Jesus redefines what it means to be truly powerful, not through domination or outward appearance, but through love, humility, and obedience to God's will. In the story of Jesus, God's pattern is fully revealed. He chooses the lowly, the overlooked, and the disfigured to accomplish his greatest work. Jesus embodies the suffering servant of Isaiah, the rejected king from Jesse's line, who bears the sins of the world and brings salvation to all. His resurrection affirms that true power is not found in outward appearances or worldly titles but in divine life and spirit-empowered love. As we reflect on these stories, we are invited to examine our own judgments. Are we too quick to value outward beauty, strength, or status? Do we trust in worldly power rather than in God's unseen but genuine work in the heart? God's story calls us to see beyond appearances, to recognize that divine authority often comes in unexpected forms, and that true greatness is rooted in humility, love, and faithfulness. So, beloved viewer, if you have been blessed or challenged by this story, please like, comment, and share. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that reveal the surprising, beautiful, and powerful ways God works in the world. Because the greatest story is not just about kings or heroes, it's about God's relentless pursuit of the lowly and the overlooked to bring forth His eternal kingdom, a kingdom of justice, peace, and righteousness, where the last shall be first, and the humble shall be exalted. Remember, in God's upside-down kingdom, the firstborn is not always who we expect. It is the heart, faithful, humble, and trusting, that truly matters. And in Jesus Christ, we see the perfect fulfillment of this divine pattern, a king who reigns through love, sacrifice, and humility, transforming the world from the inside out. Let us embrace this surprising, grace-filled story and join in God's mission to lift up the lowly and bring justice to the oppressed. Amen.